Jason, do you miss playing when you hear a moment like that and how you guys got to sell? I mean, you get to go in the end zone and like, oh my God, our season's still alive. And then like 5 minutes later, and I mean real minutes, like 1 minute of football action, but 5 to 7 minutes later, there's a double doink and you guys survived. So there was 2 different plays in that game where the season was on the line and they both went your way. Do you miss playing more now when it's like this is the playoffs?
Yeah, of course. I mean, well, and I think you hearing sound bites, you get flash back into that, and you get goosebumps. And whenever you're put back into that moment, and audio does a great job of it. It's just it puts you in that mindset that you're out there with your guys again. You're competing, and there's few things that bring you as much joy as accomplishing a playoff victory with a bunch of guys that you've been battling with for months and years and an entire career. So for sure, yeah, the playoffs, there's just an air about it. I'm sure at the stadium this week it's going to have it, and it has a way of overtaking you and bringing you back to when you played, I think. Similar to the way kind of element games do. That's one of the reasons I love snow games, because immediately you get put back into that type of weather and that type of adversity. And similar in the playoffs, it's one and done. The stakes are high. Everybody's, backs to their necks, the hair is standing up. So
do you get more nervous?
Do you get more nervous?
Playoff game. Do you get before it or during it?
I think the nervous thing happens when it's like your first time going out there. I think the more reps you get of something, the less those nerves factor in. And then, when you're good, you tend to be confident in yourselves, especially as a group. You might be nervous individually, but you tend to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Like that's one of the best things about football is, maybe sometimes you're a little bit unsure about a play that you have to execute. But because it's a team game, you feel confident you're going to get it done because the other guys around you are there with you.
Yeah.
I will say
it ends up being more fun. The playoffs are so much more important to everyone, and that makes it more enjoyable, at least when you're successful. And it just it reverberates, and you hearken back to it in years after. It matters more. It's played better. It's played harder, and for some reason, that's just so much more fun.
Yeah. Sure. No, that makes sense. I think one thing, though, I sense that, this is just me as a viewer, as a fan, that there are some players, especially in the third and fourth quarter, like if the walls are closing in on your season, and especially if it's closing on an individual player who's struggling, like Darnold last year.
Yeah.
There are guys where I feel like they spit it up. And
it's no question. Yeah, there's a reason why there's quarterbacks that perform well in the playoffs and guys that routinely do well in 2-minute drills and things like that. And I think, again, I love Jalen Hurts, and I think that's one of his really good attributes. I think a lot of people get frustrated sometimes with the lack of emotion and the lack of I guess boisterousness when things are not going well. But I think that this is one of the things that you get on the other side of that. When you're in pivotal moments, it never gets too high for him. He is always so composed in those situations, and he has ability to think very clearly and make good decisions. And he's routinely operated really well in meaningful moments of games.
How calming is that in the huddle?
It is. It's very calming. And I think it brings everybody else's temperature down too. Right? There's nothing worse than going into a huddle and you can hear anxiety in a freaking signal caller's voice. That's not good, right? And you don't sense that with this guy ever, especially in these kind of moments. Like he lives for kind of this kind of stuff. So, I think that's one of Jalen's truly remarkable, good traits as a player and why he's had a lot of success in every level of football he's played.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
94 WIP HD 1 Philadelphia as we broadcast today from the Tasty Cake studio, getting ever closer to the Eagles and the Niners. So I feel like this week as a show, we've talked an awful lot, for obvious reasons, about the Niners offense against the Eagles defense, because I think that's the heart of the game. Mm-hmm. We've talked an awful lot about the Eagles offense, because that's the thing that freaks everyone out the most, for obvious reasons. But then there's that other unit, which we haven't talked a ton about, and that's the Niners defense. And I want to give you a little taste of what the Eagles are up against. And frankly, it's not the 85 Bears. or the 00 Ravens, or last year's Eagles. Because the Niners D, as laid out by Shil Kapadia with this exchange we had with him earlier this week, is really lame. Listen to something Shil said, and I want to get Jason's thoughts on what the Eagles will be facing against them defensively.
Defensively, not just bad. I would argue one of the worst in the NFL right now when you look at the personnel that they're working with. They lost all their best players. Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, their first-round pick. All these guys went down with injuries. They're starting kind of practice squad guys at linebacker. And so if you can't move the football against this defense, you really don't deserve to move on.
So does that mean it would be a disappointment? I mean, independent of whether they win or lose the game, the Eagles, would it be bad if the Eagles don't score 25 points? Is that how bad the Niners defense is, that it would be bad if the Eagles don't get to 25?
I think so.
Are they one of the worst units left in the playoffs, Jason, this Niners D? Because we have not talked a ton about it, but they have lost a lot of players.
Yeah, I think personnel-wise, they're probably one of the thinnest, if not the thinnest, right? I mean, you look
That's
at
great.
You look at their defensive line, like these aren't like personnel-wise, it's very clear who has the advantage, the Eagles offense versus the San Fran defense. But that's most games for the Eagles offense, to be honest with you. I think I do want to give credit to Robert Saleh and this defense, though. Like even last week, they're getting it ran on them up and down the field with Charbonnet and Walker. And they find a way to keep them out of the end zone. And it's at the end of the game, they only got 13 points against them. Yeah. They played terrible, but they only gave up 13 points. This is a really good team. And I think even great teams and great coaches, they find ways to weather this stuff and somehow do it. But I do think that the Eagles should have success on offense for sure, especially personnel-wise. And their defensive line, like if you can't set an edge on the perimeter, and we dealt with this a little bit, last year with Bryce Huff, right? Like I think they're thin inside. It's really going to come down to, I think, does the slanting and angling, because they're going to watch the tape, they're going to move those guys. Does the slanting and angling and the miscommunications cost us? Because that's really the only way I see us not running the ball well, especially with Saquon Barkley. I hope to see a pretty decent usage of Tank at this point. I mean, how many times does a guy have to flash to be like, why are we not giving this guy more? I mean, that's the reality of it. And it pairs up so well with what Saquon does. If you want to be, Saquon is so good at reading these zone plays and hitting them front side, hitting them backside. Tank isn't reading anything, I'm convinced. I think he just gets the ball and he just shoom right up. And when you're a linebacker, unless you fill that hole now on a guy like that, he's going to get 4 or 5 yards. You got to come downhill and fill your gap now. And then you go back to Saquon. That guy gets used to that tempo.
Especially when you got linebackers who don't know what they're doing out there because they're all filling. Play action, two different backs. One who's running downhill like his hair's on fire every time, and one who's reading it out. Yeah. That really does create – look, if Tank hits it fast, like you said, and he does have those fresh legs. They have to step up. These linebackers, there's no way possible if we play action off of that they'll be able to get back.
Well, the other special I'll say is if Jalen's running. Because if he puts that threat out early in the game, then it's a whole nother thing. All right, so Jason, the Eagles-Niners thing. Would you say a couple of years ago, was there hatred?
I think definitely from the Niners standpoint. I think that became hatred from our standpoint probably after that following regular season game. I think, we beat them up in Philadelphia, obviously Philadelphia. Most of the people that I hear from now are fans that we beat in the link when they thought they were going to win the game, right? So like the 49ers came in, they thought that they were going to take us down, and they're mad that the game's going well, or not going well for them. And then they're also mad that, like, Philadelphia's giving them a hard time. And it's like, what did you expect? You're coming in here confident in our house, trying to throw it in our face, and now you're mad that people are upset with you? Like, you're out of your mind. I got into a discussion with a Minnesota Vikings fan in Dublin, and they're still resentful about this. Like, you guys put a jersey on Rocky, and you're doing the skull chant on the airplane. What the hell did you think you were going to walk into? Right. And you're mad at us? We probably shouldn't have thrown rocks at the buses. We could go a little far too, if I'm being honest. I will say, but I mean, you guys sometimes, like my dad said, we'd be in the back seat, and my brother would be poking me, trying to get me to react, and my dad would say, "I'm going to let him hit you." So, you keep antagonizing it. At some point, you're kind of asking for something. Anyways, it got to a level, and I think
were they jealous of you? Would you think their team was? Because here, my theory was they were all ticked off that they didn't kind of in their mind get a fair shake because their quarterbacks got knocked out.
Yeah, I think that plays into
but
it.
it's like, here's the big but. But Kyle Shanahan, don't have a tight end try to block prime Hassan Reddick and think you can get away with it. Reddick beat that guy, knocked Purdy over, injures him, gets the ball.
Yeah.
Like, that's Shanahan's fault. And I think he's a great coach, but they got to own that. Their coach chose to do that. Quarterback knocked out, other quarterback knocked out. That's the ball game.
I mean, that's also the way that offense functions. I don't think that's – I mean, listen, Shanahan called that play, but that's a play he calls all the time. Like, all of these play actions where tight ends are blocking ends, and you try and use enough misdirection that block is easier than if he just lined up and he's just doing it. I think, they definitely were resentful that Brock got hurt. I still think we win the game if Brock's in there. I think our defense was incredible that year, and I think offensively, although we started a little kind of wonky in that game, we got going, and we were running the ball very well. As good as they were defensively, those linebackers didn't play the RPOs very well, and they were kind of flat-footed, and that allowed us to take their strength out of the game. Fred Warner, how fast he is. All of a sudden you put him in a reading situation, and he's got to be a tick slower. And, we played well in that game. That's the bottom line.